Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. So in this episode, Sylvia and I jump right in. A couple of things here. One, the audio quality isn't as good as some of the other recordings, so my apologies on that. And the second thing is I wanted to give you a little background on who Moshe is and Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais. It says on their website that a parent might bring their child to Feldenkrais or a Feldenkrais practitioner because their child has cerebral palsy, autism, learning difficulties, scoliosis, brain injury, genetic movement disorders, or simply a coordination issue. It says the Feldenkrais method is a holistic way of looking at development and growth. It says the practitioner engages specific movement sequences, all while paying close attention to the process of learning and curiosity. So while we talk a lot about how Sylvia works, we don't really give you a clear definition of what it is that she does. And that's because she's merging her training with Feldenkrais and Anat Baniel and all of the areas of her expertise. So it is a movement specific therapy, and I put that in quotes because Sylvia calls them lessons, and it's about the brain learning and awakening the brain and getting that curiosity for a child so that they are able to make new neural connections and increase that neuroplasticity. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an intro to what it is that we're talking about, and I hope you enjoy and let me know what you think. I am thrilled to introduce you to Sylvia Shordike. She is the originator of the personalized NeuroHorizons experiential learning programs for parents and professionals. She's the author of the NeuroHorizons Primer, which is the essential big picture handbook for those seeking to elevate their service to special needs children through movement. Formerly a trainer for the Anat Baniel Method Neuromovement Professional and Children's Mastery Training Programs in California, and a longtime practitioner at the Anat Baniel Method Center, which was in California as well. She was a trainer for the NeuroScan Balanced Institute in 2013. She's a Guild-certified Feldenkrais practitioner. She's certified Anat Baniel Method Neuromovement practitioner since 2002. And she's an AB-NMM Mastery Certifications for Children with Special Needs, Aging and Vitality and High Performers since 2003. And to top it off, in 1994, she started a private practice. And last but not least, she is one of my teachers in NeuroHorizons. So, Sylvia, we are so excited to have you join us. Thank you for taking some time.
So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You have a lot of amazing history, and I always love sharing people's stories with our listeners about how you got to where you are. And so if you would take a few moments and just let me know how you got into all of this movement and brain work.
I got into this work actually very early on when I came to the US as an au pair. And I happened to meet a few people that were into the Feldenkrais work. And so I heard about it. I read Moshe's book. But what was really absolutely hitting me when I saw him work on a video, because he already passed away, how he worked with a child. And I could see how he was doing something so different, the time he took. He was absolutely communicating, talking to the child through movement. Everything he did was full intentional. And the dance he had with the child was just incredible. And the outcome of changes in that child was incredible. So I made a decision way back, this is what I want to learn. But I always was after something different. And that is what I've learned and what I continue to learn with wonderful teachers I had in my life. And then on my own, when it was time for me to move on and be a teacher myself for wonderful parents, practitioners, or other therapists. And of course, the children. And I understand that in order to make a difference for a child, when they don't develop as easily as a typical child because they maybe have an injury at birth or in utero, or they have any other genetic disorders, you name it, is to really connect with the child through movement and be full embodied so that the child can make the changes in her or his brain, because nobody else can do it but the child. So that's the big difference with usually other modalities. We don't manipulate, we don't stretch, range of motion, training the child, whatever. No, we use movement to communicate with the brain and the nervous system so the child makes new connections, which is neuroplasticity, because the brain is plastic at all times.
I'm going to back up, and full disclosure here, my Teal worked with you. I brought her to you when she was just 3, I think. And at that point, she wasn't, there's so much I've learned about how Teal's body wasn't working to help her, and her brain wasn't telling her body how to work. Correctly is not really the right word, but in synchronicity. And what I'm getting at here is you saw Teal as a brain that could communicate to the body. And I think a lot of other practitioners just saw her body. And especially with PT, they just focused on, no matter what, we're going to get the body to move the way we need it to move. And I think what you're really looking at is it's all connected to, how does the brain tell your body to move? The first time you looked at Teal, you literally, well, I would love to get your feedback if you remember, but she was just this block. We were focusing on getting her to walk, but she didn't know how to fall yet. Like, her brain didn't even know the difference. Would you comment on some of that?
Well, first of all, I want to back up a little bit. So I didn't see Teal just as a brain. Of course, I know she has a brain and nervous system, but I know it sounds funny.
Good point. Really good point. She is a person.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I really saw Teal right away, and I see all children like this as a person. I'm curious about them, and I study them, I touch them, I feel them, and that gives me information. And then immediately my mission is to be really deeply in connection with them so that learning can occur, that I start basically the dance with the child's learning. And I take them from where they are. So when I met Teal for the first time, and I saw you coming in, you were holding that little stick, and she was holding on to dear life, and she was moving her legs, and that was supposed to be practicing walking. And I immediately it's very clear to me, like with other children then too, we just have to kind of back off completely. We're not going there because she is so not ready for this. And so that's my job. And that's my job then to help Teal bit by bit over the time that we were working to slow down, to feel okay about not having to perform. First of all, also that comes also in because children want to make the adults happy. Look what I can do. But if you're not ready to do something, you're just not ready to do it. And for some of these children, they get pushed into performances that will never work. And it's like somebody asking you, okay, now do 3 somersaults in the air, and if you're not a gymnast, if you're not trained in that, you won't be able to do it. Right. And if you get pressure to it, it will be very scary and horrible.
I think milestones are what really gets in the way for a lot of parents, right? You take your child to the doctor, and where are they in comparison to where other kids are? And the best thing that you've taught me, because I am in your NeuroHorizons experiential learning programs, so I'm learning how to better communicate with Teal, better work with her brain, better work with how she moves and how I put my hands on her. Really, you've taught me so much about how do I touch my child in every movement, and how do I help her feel more comfortable with where she currently is And I think, since I've said this before I worked with you, but now I see it even more, is Teal is where she is, and we are celebrating that.
And she moves more and more forward, and not just in her movement, but in her thinking, in her feeling, in her emotions. That's what we become. We are a whole complex being. We're not just legs or a walker or a talker or an eater. We just, it's very very complex. And as the children move forward, they develop like what a typical child has to do too. Hopefully you have a nice environment that you can explore yourself. You get time to explore yourself. You get to not be told right away what you're feeling or not feeling. Hopefully you have that environment and become more and more a person. You can grow, mature, differentiate, more and more and more into more complexity. And all the children, including Teal, no matter how strong or the insult of the brain was in terms of injury, they all do that. And they all do it in their own times. But you can't force it. You can't force it. But as soon as they feel, wow, I get to feel myself, they all learn and they all move forward. And that's so wonderful. And I always trust that. I always trust it, because it always happens. I haven't met a child where that hasn't happened. It's also because you experienced in your own kinesthetic, experience, what the work can do for you through the movements and through working with, your friends and peers in class, so because you understand your own body and nervous system and brain, that's why you can give it to your daughter now.
Right. Well, and you talk a lot about that performance that the children especially are trying to perform, or that the parent has decided kind of who they're going to be, and that persona is what they place on that child. It's interesting that I've watched you engage with Teal now for 2+ years, and I feel like she is starting to break out of who she thinks the world wants her to be, and she is more settled in her own body and her own person. And that does mean a few more, I don't want to say tantrums, because she doesn't really tantrum, but that means she's more expressive. And sometimes that expressiveness isn't exactly the yes girl that I'd like her to be, right? I don't want her to be the yes girl, but as a parent, I'm like, well, like even just today, I was trying to put on her pants and she just was not going to bend her legs. I mean, she just wasn't. She was like, no. And it was so interesting that I embodied Sylvia. Literally, I was like, okay, take a deep breath. Let her express herself. Let her do what she needs to do. And I stopped fighting her. I just let her do it. I sat there. I watched her. And within, a couple of seconds, literally, it was like maybe 5 seconds, she goes, and she just lays down and starts looking at something else. And we proceeded with putting on her pants. But that whole concept of you giving her that ability to say, no, I want my legs straight right now, not just, why are my legs straight right now? Am I making myself clear at all?
Parenting is complex, and of course there are times, when the kids test you like any other child, and they don't want to cooperate and so on, and you have to do your picks. Where do you draw the boundary?
Pick your battles
and all that stuff. I mean, like we all know that, how complex that is. What I want to teach is that we have more of feeling. Look, there's the emotional and the parenting and the feistiness and all that stuff, by all means. And that's part of life. And you have to decide how you're going to parent around that. But to be more specific around our work is when the child can do something because their nervous system and brain doesn't have enough pieces of the puzzle to create that picture. Too many pieces of the puzzle are not there. If you think of a puzzle, first you don't see anything, and then, or maybe tons of blue and it has no meaning until the picture fills in more and more. And so that's when the child feels, and the nervous system feels, oh, wow, things are coming together, and I can form new connections to come to the next developmental step at this given time. And this process is not linear. That's very important to know that. It's linear in so much that usually a child learns to walk first before the ride a typical bicycle, I want to say, not a special needs bicycle, usually. Yeah. So, I mean, there are, of course, certain steps, but the developmental milestones, so it's called, not all of them get there at the same time. Some need more time than other children. It depends. And a child that has an injury and cannot explore enough with random movements by herself or himself, this is where we have to come in. And this is what I saw in Teal. It's coming back to Teal in that way. When I saw her coming in, walking on her tippy toes, having toners way too high all over her body, and she can't really open her hands in case she falls to push, to make sure she doesn't fall on her head. So then I go, all alarm, we have to back way off. I have to give Teal enough links that she can bit by bit get to know her pelvis, get to know how to lean on her arms, know how to use her eyes to roll. And there's so many complexity in what a child does between one developed milestone, so to speak, in between the other. They do tons of things. They learn all through feelings, all done by feeling, not by being told to. You can tell somebody, no, roll this, no, roll that, no, do this. It won't work. You either feel it, and that informs the brain, or you don't. And our job, and that's what you learn now too, is to provide the possibility for another nervous system to feel what they can't feel at this current time on their own.
And so that puzzle piece portion, and then the feeling, that's the making the links, that's all that neuroplasticity is, right, is helping the brain. And you said it's not linear, and it is true. Like one child might learn that they have elbows, right? And then that all of a sudden expresses itself in more sounds. The brain is, there's research that shows we don't even know how how the brain of an earthworm works. So how the heck do scientists think that they can understand the human brain? And I think that gives you so many possibilities as a parent and as a practitioner, like what you're doing, is because we don't know how things are going to work, or because we can't exactly put it in a box. There's so many possibilities then. Okay, so let's go to, you've used the words differentiation, you've words all sorts of things, and I believe that's a whole nother podcast where we get into like the nitty gritty, but sure. I would love for you to talk a bit about some examples. Totally going off script here. Sorry, I had some questions for you. We're going off script. Are there some examples like that where, you saw someone being able to understand their ankles more, and as a result, their arms work better? Or can you give some examples of how your lessons, and I know that's a word that you've mentioned, lessons work, because it's about their brain?
Back to the way how I work. I connect with the child, and I feel the child, and I help the child to go with me, so they start feeling themselves, or become more aware of themselves. And I use movement with that. So I can't give you, and I think it would be kind of boring, and it would get linear again. I can't say, well, I had child X and I did something with the ankle, and then all of a sudden. Because
every child's different.
But what I want to say is, like, I had many kids over a long period of time, and I had children who you would look at them, you wouldn't think they would ever say a word, or ever come to sit up, or ever come to walk, and then they did. So and it's not by miracle or by a magic wand of some sort, but it's by being patient and being bit by bit following what I believe the children's brain can do, and bit by bit give them time, but I do help them to inform them. I'm not just sitting there in hope, I mean, I use my skills, but it still has to happen for the child to feel so they can make the new connection. Just an example, I mean, I think the oldest child that I witnessed, he could walk independently, was at 14. Another one at 8. So these are ages that usually you go like, if you don't walk by then, it's not going to happen, That doesn't mean every child will walk, and I actually believe you can have a wonderful life in a wheelchair if you feel good about yourself, so you can be part of the world. That's what it's about. We're not robots that everybody has to be in a certain way. But to help a child to become more of who they are is so wonderful. And this is what I love. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, if they learn to crawl and to sit up and to walk, of course, we want all that for the children. No, it's not for every child the same. But I had these major examples for sure. And these kids also then didn't do any other massive training, therapeutic on top of it, but they believed in the work, they believed in brain plasticity, and they gave the child the time so that they could do it. And I mean, let's say I have one example that just happened who didn't have a brain injury, but a torticollis due to birth. Usually the head is turned to one side, and then the muscles are contracting, that the child doesn't have the freedom in the neck, the baby. And so, and that has what happens, the baby can't roll the head in freely from side to side, and the eyes, which is very important. Then the brain learns, oh, my muscle contracts all the time. My head goes to the right all the time. And then over and over and over. And then the brain learns that. And then we have to jump in and to give the brain the opportunity to feel, hey, you can also turn the head to the other side. But that's not happening by stretching, because that hurts. And then the baby screams, and then they get, it's horrible. And it doesn't work. So you have to come again and touch and feel, and until that baby brain can figure out, oh, I can go this way, my spine can roll this way, my ribs can move that way. So we did this for this boy, and like in literally a week, he kind of caught up with, I want to say, 3 milestones. Yeah, because he was completely stuck. So it can happen. So that was just one intensive. It can happen very, very fast, But then with other children, it takes maybe a little longer. But for me, that's not so important. For me, it's important that I am present and bit by bit help the child to the next step.
Right. And just the whole concept of that child being able to see things to their left. I mean, just how amazingly profound for that child too. They thought, oh, the world is only on my right. My world is only on my right. My world is only, oh, my Lanta, there is a whole other world on my left side. I mean, that's what like you're doing. Yeah, you're giving that kid or this little baby an opportunity to see more of the world. And as a result of seeing more of the world, they are more present within themselves.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful.
And we develop as human beings by relating to the environment. It's us, it's gravity. That's why we need movement, we need the floor, we need gravity. It's the environment. That's how we grow as a complex person and can bit by bit mature, And you're right. If all of a sudden, and that's true for all kids, when they start feeling themselves more on the sides, behind, below, in front, the world becomes bigger. The movement became the more variable. They can move around more. That means they feel themselves more in relation to gravity. Then they see more. They smell more. And the whole awareness starts to expand. Absolutely.
Well, from personal experience, I mean, just this last week when I was in my coaching sessions with you, I started learning about my ribs, and I came back one morning and I was like, oh, I'm no longer going to be small. I'm going to be big because my ribs are open and they're free. And I mean, it's empowering for a 40-year-old person. I mean, how cool is that, right? It's not just for a 5-year-old or a 5-month-old or a 5-day-old. Our brain continues to work and grow and expand. So that's pretty cool.
As long as we're alive, that the brain does that for us.
Right. What a powerful gift you're giving families. What advice? Because one of the things I always try to look at is how can parents take something away from this episode that isn't just educational, but something that they can do immediately. So if I have a newborn child, I'm thinking of our friends who just had that beautiful baby and she's just gorgeous and they haven't really done a lot to her and she's growing and being curious and she's moving and all of that. What do you think parents do that inhibit some of that, even if they don't have a child with special needs?
Well, one advice, first of all, you guys can look at my website. We can bring out that information. Also, my book, there's some tips and tools in there as well. But also, in general, just trust. Look, unless there's an extreme stressful situation, which happens in life, so I'm not talking about that. But let's say this is a relatively normal situation. We have enough to eat. We have a head over our roof and so on. You just want to be present with your baby. You want to be present with your child. And you want to give them just be with them, So when they're very small, they're not supposed to do much. You carry them, you nurse them, you change diapers, but all that, if you bring yourself into a presence and slow down, if you can, if you have that time, just slow down, talk to your baby before you do anything, tell them we're going to change the diapers now, and then wait a second, and then you start opening now we do this, now we do that, you just talk to them. And I mean, naturally we have that all in us. I think the trouble nowadays in the modern world is that people or the industry comes up with all these crazy, I just walked yesterday, just now, I mean, I know they exist, but it was in my face, so I took a picture. Looked for something at Target, and there are these ridiculous seats for babies. So you can put them in a seat on the floor, and they're not ready to sit by themselves. That's why you put them in these seats. This is what messes up a healthy, developing child, folks. That's one example.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ready to sit. They shouldn't be sitting. Because guess what? They will learn to sit if you have time. But they're not supposed to sit when they're a month old. They're not supposed to sit when they're 2 months old. They're not supposed to sit when they're 3 months old. So that's important to know, that they have to have their time and to develop. And if we interfere with sitters or swings or jumpers or also, I think it's problematic if you carry your child around from one apartment to the other, and then your kid has been sitting in the car seat all day long, because you just click it now in the car, then you click it into the what's it called, the stroller.
Mm-hmm.
Then now I've run this errand and that errand, and then so stuff like that. So the best is the child. Sometimes we have to go somewhere, of course. Then we put them in the car seat, but the best is you hold your child, carry your child, or put it on the floor.
Yeah. I think I remember
gravity.
Right. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway in the beginning is let your child move, whether they're neuroatypical or neurotypical, let them move on the ground. Like
exactly.
Just explore and let them look up into the corner and see the light that's flickering through the window.
And there's so much that they feel and see. You don't have to entertain your little kid with noisy toys and I mean, there's so much. If a baby is left alone, they see the light, like you just said, shining in the room like this. Somebody walks by, or there's mommy walking by. They smell something. They hear a bird, they hear maybe an airplane. I mean, there's so much that the world gives anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to kind of add to stimulation, so to speak,
Right. If you are sitting right now with your child, close your eyes. It's very interesting. Close your eyes and just start listening to all of the sounds in your house. And think about just how much stimulation that is for your 5-day-old or your 5-month-old. Just the sounds that come from the room in your living room, or the refrigerator kicks on, or the hum of the fan, or an airplane, like you said, or a bird. There are so many sounds all around us. And that's such a great example of, we can all do that every day to open up our ears more, right? And to realize all the stimulation that's around us.
Exactly.
And in fact, our own brain, not just our child's brain.
Absolutely. And to trust the intelligence of each child. Even the children blow me away. I have met children that have really massive brain injuries, and they blow me away with what they can come up with, their smartness, their intelligence. They all have that. And to trust that, and not to make them and push them constantly into something they can't do, they're not ready for, which will gives them the feeling of failure.
Right.
And then they start to feel not good about themselves. And then you have a child that's already crushed, so, and they all have things to give. They all learn. You just need to give them the opportunity to be able to become learners.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that we'll wrap this up in just a second, because I know you're a busy woman with lots of children to see and give lessons to, so that their brains engage and work better for them. One thing that I do want to give you credit for, and I've mentioned this before, is the whole mom guilt or the parent guilt. As a result of working with you and seeing you work with Teal and then learning from you, my mom guilt has dramatically decreased. And it's because I used to try to fit PT into our schedule. I used to try to fit OT in. And now we're going to sit down and do flashcards and talk and buh and puh, right, with speech. And I always felt like I was never doing enough. There was never enough time in the day. I was never present enough, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
There was just too much to do because, and all of these parents that are listening, or caregivers or grandparents or family members that are listening, they can relate to this, because it's just this mom guilt. And even if you don't have a child with special needs, you have mom guilt. But what you have taught me is that every single moment I have with my daughter can be a learning opportunity, but in a way that isn't about me pushing learning on her. It's about me just giving her an opportunity to learn if she wants to take it. So like you said, I change her diaper differently. I move her leg differently so that she feels how her hip moves and how her pelvis moves when I'm changing her diaper, or when I bring her up to sitting. When I bring her to sitting, I do it in a way that helps her spine move and helps her neck move and helps her pelvis move. And I say, look at mama, look at me, look at me, look at me, so that she's looking where she wants to move. And all of that stuff changes, because that's PT, OT, speech, that's everything right there combined in how I sit her up after changing her diaper, truly. So I just want to thank you for empowering me to be a more present mom, but also to be a more joyful mom. Yeah. Because I'm not stressed out as much as I used to be, because Teal's brain will get it. Her brain is moving and growing and changing every single day. And my touch with her and my intention with her is allowing that to happen even more. So I just thank you for that. And I encourage other parents to look into NeuroHorizons. I encourage you to look into Feldenkrais practitioners if you don't have a NeuroHorizons practitioner near you. But where can they find you? And we'll put that in the show notes and all of that. And you mentioned your book, The NeuroHorizons Primer. That can be found on Amazon. Where is that?
Well, if you go on my website, there's actually, yes, on Amazon, you can buy the hard copy, but you can also, there's an ebook that you could download, that you get the link from the website, which is neurohorizons.world. Yeah, you find the NeuroHorizons Primer there. And you also can get informed if you scroll down a touch, go to Fundamentals of Experiential Movement, and you can read about my parent seminar or that I offer. One you are in, the 10 segments. which starts with the very first segment about, first segments about the first 4 months in your child's life. And then it continues all the way up to standing. And if you're in Europe, I just want to throw this out, or if you know anybody in Europe, we have a wonderful training, European training there. And the website there is NeuroHorizons.eu for Europe. And the training is currently in Ravensburg, Germany, and it's a wonderful program. We're starting a brand new one the end of March.
Great, 2022. Okay, wonderful. It has been profoundly beneficial for me to have found you. My world is better. Teal's world is better. And I know my whole family's world is better. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. I think it would be nice to have you come back and we can talk more about what parents can do proactively. And then one just little last bit right there is you guys all know Teal's 5, but when I took Sylvia's program segments, the 0 to 4 months, I learned so much about how to engage with Teal, even as a 5-year-old, from the 0 to 4 segments. So don't think that, oh my gosh, I've got a 6-month-old and I certainly can't benefit from the 0 to 4 months. My 5-year-old benefited from it. So it's all progression and brain development.
And also, just to add that, Jen, it's so true. Also, just want to say we have one elderly person. I shouldn't say elderly because she's so awesome, but she does it for herself, for her own health benefits as getting older, because everything you lose or you haven't developed clearly as a child, or you have lost, I want to say, by life, so to speak, this is exactly what creates problems in our adulthood. The knee problem, the wrist problem, you name it, the chronic back problem. And so if you learn again to move like a child, you will grow older very differently.
It's true. All right. Well, thank you so very much. We will put all that information in the show notes, and I'm so excited to talk with you again. And I'll see you next week with Teal.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sylvia. Have a really good day.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.